Okay, everyone. I think we're going to go ahead and get started. So this is our first recruiting chalk talks. We're going to get these going maybe like on a bi-weekly basis, bringing in coaches and former players to talk to our 16 and 18U groups. The focus of this is just to have an opportunity to hear what the recruiting process is like and what the playing experience is like in college, and to give the girls an opportunity to ask questions and engage our speakers. Now, we have an extra bonus tonight. Lauren Pletscher is joining us too. She also played at Oakland University, and she was primarily a catcher. And we obviously have Hayley with us as well, and both of them are coaching our 12U HangTuf team this year, so it's a great experience for those girls as well. So I'm going to turn things over here to Hayley, and we kind of talked about the agenda and so on, and then obviously, if you're watching, just please mute your videos so that way there's not an echo or any sound issues involved with it, and then we'll have some time here at the end to ask questions and provide answers. Okay? All right. Here you go, Hayley.
Sounds good. Thanks, Scott. So I was thinking we could start with a little bit of an introduction. Laura and I can introduce ourselves, talk a little bit about our softball experience leading up to college and including college. Obviously talk about the recruiting process, kind of explain what it looked like for both of us. And I know we're not that old. It wasn't that long since we went through it, but things have definitely changed since we went through the recruiting process. I don't know, probably like 7 or so years ago now. And then I just had a couple of miscellaneous topics that I thought we could go through, and then obviously finish up with some questions. So I'll start with a little bit of an introduction. My name is Hayley. I am from Allen Park, which is just south of Detroit originally. Growing up, I played local travel teams. I played for Wildfire Fast Pitch, which you probably haven't heard of because it's not around anymore. I was on the last team of that. And I played for a Turn 2 team in 18U. I went to high school at Allen Park High School. I primarily pitched there my senior year, but my sophomore and junior year, I was a utility player. I started in every position on the field except for catching. So I kind of did a little bit of everything there. And then my junior year, I committed to Oakland U. And freshman year, I mostly played outfield. When I played sophomore year, I was injured and I didn't play a whole ton. And then junior and senior year, I primarily pitched. I'll go ahead and pass it to Lauren for a little intro.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm Lauren. I also played at Oakland with Hayley, but I am from Durand, Michigan, kind of between like Flint and Lansing up in the north. I played for Durand High School for like my career there. I was mainly a catcher, but utility as well for outfield and first base. For my travel, I played for CompuWare and Finesse for pretty much since like I was 12 through 18. And then in college at Oakland, I was mainly a catcher. And then, if they needed me for like DP, I was there. But yeah, mainly catching. I played there from 2016 to 2019. And I think my last year I graduated early, so I didn't get to play that last year. But for my recruiting experience, I was actually recruited my freshman year at 14, so a little bit sooner. I know that's not even like a thing now, so we'll definitely get into that. But I'll throw it back to you, Hayley.
Cool, thanks, Lauren. So we'll kind of jump right into the recruiting process. Kind of what I went through. We can bounce it off of Lauren, what she went through, and then I did my research and I talked to our former teammate Erin, who played with us at Oakland. She was the pitching coach at Schoolcraft College, and she's now a high school coach back at the high school she went to, and she coaches the 16U Vengeance team. So I got some additional info from her on how kind of the process has changed since we went through it. So from my experience, I was probably like 8th grade when I really decided college ball is something that I saw in my future. It's something I really wanted to do. So I started going to camps. I know camps probably aren't as prevalent now, especially with COVID, But I went to the camps of the schools that I was interested in mostly. So, I went to like Bowling Green camps, I went to Eastern camps, Oakland camps. I sent a lot of emails to coaches, including things like my stats, personal things about me, academic things, why I wanted to go to the school, why I thought it was a good fit for me. I usually threw something in about their program that impressed me or that I noticed. Something about like, hey, I saw, your spring trip in Florida went well. You guys came out over 500. That's awesome. Just something small that showed that you're, into their program. You've been following them. And I would say the biggest thing for me was the camps. The biggest thing about the camps is stand out, obviously in a good way, not in a bad way. So making sure that we're hustling to stations, always being coachable, even if they tell you something that sounds completely outrageous. Yes, coach, I'll try that. It might work, it might not, but at least you're showing that you're willing to give it a go. And then the biggest thing for me, at the end of every camp, I always made it a point to stay after, shake the coach's hand, introduce myself, and thank them for putting on the camp. I did this to the point, and you want to be a pest to these coaches. I shook Connie Miner's hand, the coach at Oakland, until she said, Hayley, I know who you are. You don't have to keep introducing yourself to me. So it sounds silly, but that's how, you get remembered. So for me, it was a lot about the camps and the emails. Always included my schedule. They didn't always come. Sometimes they did. But yeah, that was pretty much it for me. I know I committed to Oakland before they actually even watched me play in a game. So it was truly just from the camps and that connection that we had and kind of the interest I showed in their program, both in softball and academically, that really made the connection for me. Lauren, did you want to talk about, I know yours is a little bit different. You recruited way earlier than I did, so.
Yeah, mine was a little bit different. I definitely started young. My sister was actually committed to Oakland. She's about 3 years older than I am. So she was committed to Oakland when I committed. I was young. I was 14. It was actually my first year playing travel. It was my freshman year. Well, actually going into my freshman year. I committed there. But it was really just like constant communication with those coaches at Oakland. I had selected my colleges that I wanted to contact very early on because I knew what program I wanted to go for academically. I had noted that I wanted to stay relatively closer to home, and I wanted to actually go into actuarial science. So that was a big draw towards Oakland. But really it was just about finding the school that is right for you, and then softball came second. I knew that I wanted to go to Oakland, so then I really tried to make that connection with the coaches, sending a lot of emails, making sure that my schedule was always in there so that they can come and watch me play. And they did do that a few times. But even though they did, commit me early on, going to those camps was definitely crucial. They did have a coaching change after I committed, and it was the catching coach of all. So the catching coach originally had recruited me at 14. I had verbally committed, and then she left, and another coach came in. So it was definitely crucial to go to those camps, make those connections with those new coaches, because there is typically a lot of turnover, especially if you commit early on or if you have that connection early on. So you want to stay constant with that, and definitely being a standout at those camps, making sure that you're giving it your all. That's really going to draw the coach's eye. Even if you're committed, you can't really back down at those camps. You got to make sure that you're going to stand out. You're actually representing the organization at that point. So making sure that you're consistent in that way. Go back to you, Hayley.
Absolutely. I think Laura made a really good point, and I was going to bring it up a little bit later, about picking a school based for you academically and then softball second. So kind of the piece of advice that I received from my travel coach when I decided I wanted to play college ball is he told me, go to a school where if you get injured the first day of practice, you're still happy going to school there. Because nobody expects that to happen, but that could totally happen, right? Softball, you never know what's next. There's injuries all the time, and you hate to think about it, but that could happen. And then you're not stuck at the school, but usually you'll at least finish out the semester. And I just wanted to be at a place where if my softball career ended before I was ready for it to, I would still be happy going to school there. And then like Lauren said, making sure that they had an academic program that I was interested in. So that's kind of the old school method of the recruiting process, the emails and the camps. And I know there's still camps. There's the blue chip camps. I know a lot of girls get recognized from there. It's a good way to get introduced to the coaches, things like that. But what I found interesting when I was talking to Erin about how things have changed, she mentioned that Twitter was a big resource for recruiting. And when I told Lauren this, she was like, Twitter? Really? Because it's so weird to us. Like, we would have never thought of that. But basically what they've had their players do is either create a separate Twitter account for softball, or you can combine your personal and softball Twitter account, as long as you keep it very professional, making sure that you're not liking things that coaches maybe wouldn't want you to be liking or interacting with. And kind of from there, they have the girls post things like their stats, you know, new workouts, new personal bests and workouts, what their schedule is, if they hit a new speed pitching, if they hit a home run in their tournament, and they have the girls tag the college coaches that they're interested in contacting with in those tweets. And they've actually received a lot of good feedback from those coaches, that the girls do a really good job running their Twitter accounts. They always see the tweets, even if it's not something that they like or that they reach out to you and respond about, they see it if you tag them. They have mentioned that if they start to know you on a more personal level, that they don't mind that you're reaching out through direct message on Twitter, but that email is still number one in terms of contacting coaches. So I thought that was interesting. We all know social media is getting more and more popular all the time, so I thought it was interesting that it's being used in the recruiting process. Did anyone have any questions on the recruiting process in general, or maybe what Lauren and I went through before we go on to a different topic?
Come on, 18U. I know you guys have questions. There's no bad question.
No, there's not.
I don't have any questions, but I used to play for Erin. She was my coach last year. She was like, her and her husband were like the coaches that got me committed to college. So, and yeah, I pretty much use social media for like, that's how I got out, like when we were in COVID, like all through COVID last year, like at the beginning of summer, that's how I reached out to my college coach and just was like sending him videos and posting videos. So social media is definitely a very big way that how I got recruited and committed. So I do agree with that.
That is awesome. Erin did tell me, she was like, oh my gosh, I have a player who went to play for the 18U team. So that's funny. I'm really glad to hear that worked for you. Do you have anything else that maybe I didn't cover that you think would be helpful for everyone to know about the Twitter recruitment process?
Honestly, just like what they did last year is like, even at practice, they had like, they would videotape us, and like they put like Coach Zach would put together like skills videos. That's her husband, if nobody knew that. He just put together skills videos of like our practice drills or whatever, and like in games. And he pretty much did that after like every tournament. He would put together a skills video for everybody, and then we would either post it on social media, or like if you have a really personal connection with the coach, like sometimes you would text it to them, and just like constantly, like the one thing that they always told me was like, kind of like what you said in the beginning, is just constantly reach out, like bug them until they're like, okay, like we did it. But yeah, so I just pretty much just skills videos is how I got committed, pretty much was the main part of it.
Awesome. Well, thanks. That's good to know.
I do have one question from Erin that she did want me to ask you, though. So
Okay.
she said she wants me to ask you, so what did you do when you got a strikeout against Florida?
Okay. So that kind of leads me.
She also wants Lauren to sing. She also told me she wants Lauren to sing.
Oh, okay. I'll tell a Florida story. Lauren can sing. It'll be fun. So it kind of leads me to my next topic anyway. So Abby, that's a great question. So what was it? My senior year, we got to play against University of Florida Gators at their home field when they were ranked #1. The game was on regular ESPN. It was so cool, such a surreal feeling. And I actually struck out one of the girls, and I was almost in so much shock, and I was so excited that I started running off the field, and I left my Rossin bag on the mound. And looking back, I should have just left it, because who cares? But instead, I turned around and ran back and picked it up, and it was on ESPN before they cut to the commercial break. So I look like an idiot. But you know what? I struck out a Florida Gator, so I said, it's fine. That's a great question. Thanks, Abby, for bringing that one back up for me.
I'd like to think I had a part in that, okay?
You did. Lauren was catching for me, and she can back me up on this one. Pitching to them was so strange because they have fans. Like, it's not their parents, it's fans, which was new for us because, you know, Oakland's Division I, but we're very small. So pretty much the people who come to our games every once in a while are their athletes, but it's mostly our parents and friends. So it was strange to pitch against a crowd, and it was their audience members are mostly like middle-aged men because, you know, there's a lot of retired people in Florida, and they totally got in my head. I would throw a pitch and it'd be a strike on the inside corner, and these old men behind the backstop would be like, that wasn't even close, and I'm like, oh my God, they're right, that was not even close. Like, what am I doing up here on this mound right now? So it was definitely a surreal experience. Somehow I did not give up any home runs, but I was wishing I was wearing shin guards because they hit a lot of them really hard right back up the middle of my shins. So it was a good experience. But like I said, it kind of leads me into my next topic, high school versus college, kind of like a whole new level of play. So Scott had asked me when he asked me to, you know, kind of come on and talk to you guys a little bit about background info from my high school and college, you know, accomplishments I had and so on. And I found it super easy to rattle off a bunch of accomplishments for high school. I had like a 14-1 record senior year. I was on the Downriver News Herald Dream Team. I had a Michigan high school record for number of strikeouts in a game. And then I got to college, and I was like, okay, well, what did I do at Oakland? Like, what stood out? And I had an average ERA, but I didn't do anything great. I was not MVP of anything. I was never, you know, the one featured and, you know, things like that. So some of my accomplishments were more experiences. Like, I got to play on the Florida Gators field against Florida Gators on ESPN, or, you know, my senior year, I was the first pitcher to beat UIC, who won the tournament the year before, and things like that. So when you're in high school and you're looking to get recruited into college, that probably means that you're one of the best players in your area, one of the best players on your high school team, and so on. And that's not always necessarily true at the college level. So for me, it was a big, I don't know if it was a shock. I knew what I was getting myself into when I committed Division I, but it was definitely a big change for me, going from being number one, the go-to, I have records, I have, you know, MVP ribbons and whatever, to I didn't play a whole ton, and when I did, I did my job, but nothing much more than that. Lauren, I don't know if you felt the same way.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, so it's so much different, you know. In high school, I'll state, you know, utility, Miss Softball. I was my district's Miss Softball nominee. And then going into college, it was so much different. It was such another level. You know, you're at that level with all these other girls that pretty much got the same accolade. And you're having to compete against these girls as well, on your own team as well as on other teams. You know, softball teams in college are not like the 12 that you're used to. You know, it's like a group of 20-some girls. So there is, you know, inter-team competition. So you actually are competing against another person who might be on your same team, and like, even though you're all friends, you're working towards the same goal. It is so much different. So, you know, making sure that you're consistently competing at your top level, it is going to be game by game, kind of like accomplishments. They're going to be much smaller accomplishments in college than you're used to in high school. So I guess just keeping that in mind, because sometimes it can be disheartening, especially starting out if you're not like prepared for it. But it is going to be a much different level of competition amongst other teams and within your own.
Agreed. The other big thing that I wanted to point out with high school to college, the big difference, time commitment. college ball is a huge, huge time commitment. I mean, I worked my butt off in high school. I'm sure you're all working your butts off. I know Lauren did too, because that's how you're going to get to that next level. But I will say nothing truly compares to that schedule that you're on as a college athlete. I know for us personally, we had 6 a.m. weights 3 days a week. So we would get up on time every time except for one. And would, get up at, we slept in till like 5:40, get dressed, head to the weight room. 6 to 7 was lift. After that, a lot of people had morning classes that they had to go to. I didn't have many morning classes, so that's kind of when I would use my time to study, catch up on homework, things like that. Then we would have practice from 2 to 5 every day. And after practice was when I had a lot of my classes. I had a lot of night classes in college, so a lot of times I was getting back to my dorm room at 9, 10 o'clock and set me alarm for 5:40 to do it all again the next morning. So you're definitely going non-stop. That being said, it prepared me a ton for the real world. Lauren and I are both super busy now, and I think we're both handling it really well, probably because we had no choice in college to do so. But I remember when I was going into high school, my travel coach telling me how much of a time commitment high school varsity ball can be, and thinking, oh yeah, that is a lot. You practice every day after school and this and that. And then going from that to college, it's like, oh my gosh, I feel like I didn't do anything in high school. So I don't know, Lauren, do you have anything to add about kind of the time commitment or any other differences between high school and college ball?
Oh yeah. No, it is so much different, with like the weights, that's completely separate from like your 3, hour practices, or like that's what we had. Your classes are going to be scattered, so you're not going to have a consistent schedule, from semester to semester. It is going to take some, adaptation going into each semester. Another thing is pitchers and catchers, I hate to say it, you're going to have to put in more time. Typically, like our pitchers and catchers would have to come in, maybe an hour early for practices just to get all that in before what our coaches wanted us to do for the next 3-hour practice. So we had to put in hours. Also, just because you're putting in hours in practice doesn't necessarily mean that someone isn't putting in more hours and they're going to get more playing time. So making sure, like, if you want to play, if you want to be out there, if you want to be the go-to, you have to be able to put in those hours outside of those scheduled practice hours. And that is, again, a huge time commitment. So making sure that you're like mentally prepared for that going in is going to make a big difference for how you're going to be successful.
Absolutely. One other point that I forgot to mention the first time, another big difference between high school and college is in college, you're not playing games with the school 10 minutes down the road. You're playing games all over the country. I think my freshman year was the worst travel year for us. So Oakland's a smaller Division I school, mostly because we don't have a football team. So that means we're going to Florida and we're taking a bus. We aren't flying. So I remember my freshman year getting on the bus to go to Florida, and one of the seniors looked at me and said, "You're going to see the sun rise, set, and rise again, and then we'll be there." And she was not kidding. We got on the bus at like 4 a.m., watched the sun rise, it set, and when it rose again, we were pulling into our hotel parking lot. So you're on the bus for sometimes over 24 hours at a time, and you're still expected to do your schoolwork, catch up on things like that. Some people do their treatments on the bus, whether that's using ice or whatever, compression boots, whatever they're supposed to be doing to keep themselves healthy. So we used to have to do study time on the bus. So, okay, for the next hour, everyone books out, we're studying. That was a big adjustment for me. I was not a fan of studying on the bus, but you got to do what you got to do. But that freshman year, we went to South Carolina. From there, we went to Florida. We came back. The next weekend, we went to Georgia and back. The next weekend, 2 or 3 weekends, Kentucky and Tennessee and back. And then we played our conference game in Green Bay that year, which was also another 8-hour ride. So I know our conference games, Green Bay was probably the furthest at 8 hours. Probably the closest was Detroit Mercy, which was about 40 minutes. So that was the only one we didn't stay in a hotel for the weekend for. So that was another big adjustment too, that you're not just getting on the bus in the afternoon, going to play a game and coming back. It's a whole weekend, and you've got to account for study time for that whole weekend, because you're going to be on the bus for a lot of it. Do you have anything to add to that one, Lauren?
One. Also, you are going to be, with your team 24/7, okay? And I know that, like, groups of girls, sometimes it's not the easiest to get along with them 24/7. So even scheduling some time out, like, for yourself, it can be much needed. So, just say, hey, like, guys, I'm going to hang back. I'm going to do some study hours, because it is a lot of togetherness with a group of, like, 20-some girls. So just some mental health might be good to prepare for. That's all I had.
Absolutely, that is so true. Did anyone have any questions about time commitments of college ball, or maybe the difference between high school and college ball, or what to expect?
I kind of have a question. Did you guys room with teammates? Like
Yes.
dorm? Okay.
Yes. So our freshman year, we had to room with other freshmen on the team. We weren't given an option. After that, we were allowed to room with whoever we wanted to room with. I chose to live with teammates every year just because it's easier all on the same schedule. If someone overslept for weights, you had a teammate there to wake you up, where if you're living with maybe other athletes who don't have weights at 6 a.m. or, hate to say it, the NARPs, who don't have weights, they might be annoyed that you're getting up at 6 a.m. Or coming in late from classes, and they definitely are not helping you get up for weights if you oversleep. Lauren and I were actually roommates our last 2 years at Oakland. But yeah, we did live with teammates.
Yeah, and I honestly think it's a lot easier to live with teammates. My freshman year, I roomed with 2 other girls who were on the team. Both of them ended up quitting within the first semester, and it was hard, so hard, because I felt awful. I'd have to still get up at 5 a.m. for those weights, and they complained the entire time. I tried to be as quiet as I could. They kept me up when I wanted to go to sleep because we weren't on the same schedule. I would highly recommend, rooming with teammates if it's a possibility.
Agreed, or at least other athletes, because then they hopefully would understand your schedule, and they probably aren't coming in late or staying up late because they probably get to get up early for something too. That was a good question. Does anyone have any other? Okay, well, we're going to save some time for questions at the end, so not a problem. I just had a couple miscellaneous topics. We kind of already talked about picking the right school for you, based off of the academics. Lauren made the point she wanted to go somewhere close to home. I was the same way. I'm a homebody. I did not want to go too far. So things like that are important to consider. Putting in the work now, we've touched on, you have to put in the work now. It'll help you prepare for that next level. I know when I went to Oakland my freshman year, I was very surprised at how many girls hadn't weightlifted before. My high school, and I'm sure many high schools, offered like a weightlifting program after school that athletes or anybody could come to for free. So I started doing that freshman year, and it definitely prepared me. I knew, how to do a lot of the basic workouts that a lot of the freshmen were behind on. Things like that. I wanted to touch on working through injuries, not specifically relating to college ball, but I know a lot of people in their career have injuries, and they're not fun and they're tough to get through. So me personally, my sophomore year of high school, I had a back injury. Nobody knew what it was. I went to physical therapy. They asked if I wanted the MRI, and at the time, we didn't have good insurance, so we said no. They said it seemed like a disc, a herniated disc, so we treated it as such. In 6 weeks or whatever with PT, I healed up and got back out there, and everything was fine. But I had a very similar injury my sophomore year of college. This one time was a little bit worse, and I did get the MRI that time, and it was a stress fracture in my vertebrae. and all my discs were fine, meaning that in high school it was another stress fracture to the vertebrae. So it was really tough for me to kind of go from 100 down to 0. I couldn't hardly walk. I couldn't move. And then I had to slowly get back into things, like riding a bike, walking on the treadmill, running on the treadmill. My advice to anybody would be, if you know your body better than anyone, if something doesn't feel right, stop. Because both times, I was better about it the second time because I'd gone through it once before. I brushed it off like, oh, people's backs get sore all the time. I just have a sore back. And I had a stress fracture in my vertebrae. So it's not something to take lightly. If something feels off, I would get it checked out. Make sure that you're taking care of yourself, because you don't want to push it too far. That's when people usually have to take more time off, is when they push things too far. So Lauren, I don't know if you had any similar incidences, injuries that you had to work through, recurring injuries, anything like that.
Definitely not anything like a stress fracture, but, we did have a lot of injuries on our team, and it was simply just, reading your own body. That difference, when you stop, is going to make the difference, between, are you going to be out for a couple weeks? Are you going to be out for a couple months? Is it going to take longer than a year? It's those things. So I know that everyone tries to play through injuries. They do. But just knowing your limits is definitely the biggest thing, because obviously softball is not like, the end all be all for any of you guys. So we want to make sure that we're going to stay healthy, even after softball. I know that it might seem like really as like almost the most important thing right now, but it's definitely not. So making sure that you're staying healthy right now, and, just knowing yourself in that respect.
Absolutely. Does anyone have any questions, or maybe want to share something about working through an injury or something that helped them get through it?
Hopefully no one's had a career-ending injury at this point.
Yeah, right. I know. This is a quiet bunch. I kind of have one more topic that I wanted to touch on, and then I'll kind of toss it over to Lauren to give her side of things, and maybe she has another topic in mind, or we can take some questions. But man, people are just giving me good segues into the next topic, because Lauren hit the nail on the head with softball is not the end-all be-all. Hate to say it, there is life after softball. Obviously, both of us are still involved in the game. We can't quite get away, right? We're both coaching, giving lessons. We both still play in the summer for fun. If I can get Lauren back out there again with me this summer. So it's not that, you're always going to love the game. You're always going to find yourself coming back to the game. But keeping in mind, looking back at my career, what's important now? For example, Lauren. We lived together, we became really good friends, and next year when I get married, she's standing up at my wedding. That's, a lifelong friendship that, you don't find every day. Similarly, Lauren's sister got married the previous year, and I stood up in her wedding. So it's like, these are people that you're building these lifelong friendships with, and it's really invaluable. Other than just friendships and teammates, employers love hiring athletes. I was told this when I was playing, and I didn't know how true it was, but I get told at work all the time just how great I am at working in a team setting. I'm there to pick up the slack if someone needs it. I'm always helping out. I'm always jumping in. I'm always communicating well. And it's because that's what we're trained to do our whole lives, right? It's communication. It's teamwork. It's those things that you don't really realize you're developing this skill until you get out into the real world and you have to apply it, and it just comes so naturally. They also love the athletes have that time management skill. Like we talked about, high school athletics is time consuming, and there's a lot to balance with grades and clubs and softball and other sports and workouts. And then college is even more than that. So if you can balance all of that and get good grades and get your degree, then they trust that you can balance your workload and, whatever career that you decide to pursue. So I don't know, Lauren, if you had any other feedback on those topics or something else maybe that looking back on you didn't think was important at the time, but you realize it now.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, friendships, that's long lasting. Obviously, Hayley, I played with my sister. That was even a great tie. That was such a great experience. being able to do that with her at the college level. And then my employer, I competed against a bunch of people for my position now, and what stood out was that I was a student athlete. They really look for that, for leadership skills, communication skills, you know, a lot of those, like, you know, skills where you have to communicate, obviously. Like, I definitely brought up in, like, a lot of my interviews, you have to communicate with everybody on the field. You're great at communicating with your coaches, your professors. You have to make sure that everyone's in the loop at pretty much at all times. So that's really what stood apart, you know, me from other candidates. That's what a lot of employers look for. And also another thing, well, like one drawback is, you know, internships are a little bit limited once you're a student athlete. Especially, I went for accounting, a lot of those winter tax internships, and that was hard to get into with our schedule. So I know that with that, it can be a little bit of a drawback, but there's definitely some advantages to being a student athlete going out into the work field. Another topic that I wanted to go into a little bit more, and I kind of just mentioned it, was communication with professors. That is such a big thing. You know, professors, a lot of times, depending on what degree field you go into, sometimes they don't even deal with student athletes that much. I know, like, Hayley, you're the only, well, one of two student athletes in your program pretty much ever. I was in a vocal performance program early on, and it was definitely difficult to discuss my needs with my professors, but it had to be done. With those time management skills there that come into play, because a lot of times you have to make sacrifices, you know, like, hey, I want to go for this, but it's only offered during, like, this last half portion of practice. You got to make sure that everything's going to be, you know, working out for you at the end. And I would definitely just recommend pushing academics above softball when it comes to that. And I'm sure Hayley might even be able to provide you a bit more of a better example there.
Yeah, absolutely. Like Lauren mentioned, I went to a program that a lot of student athletes hadn't gone into before. A lot of my professors didn't quite understand the time commitment. I needed extra help, and they said, well, come to our, you know, SI, the supplemental instruction portion. And I said, well, I can't. I have practice. Can you do it another time? Some professors work better with you than others, but at the end of the day, the job needs done and the grades need in so you can get the degree. One of the reasons I chose Oakland was because Coach Miner was an academics first kind of coach, and that was very important to me. So if we did have a class that interfered with practice time, we were allowed to miss practice to attend a class if it was kind of the only option in the schedule. So if academics are really important to you, and I hope that they are, because, you know, at the end of the 4 years, you walk out with great softball memories, but you got to have that degree in hand to kind of move forward. Just make sure that you're clear with that coach when you're talking to them about what you want to do, if it's feasible. I had a friend of mine, and she's a few years older than me, and she went to Eastern, and she played softball at EMU, and she was told, I believe it was by Eastern's nursing program, they don't allow student athletes in their program because they miss clinicals, and that's not cool. You can't do that if you want to be a nurse. Oakland did allow student athletes in their nursing programs. Lauren's sister went into nursing. She's got a great job now. So it's not all schools, but it does apply. And sometimes it's the coaches who say, like, well, we don't want, you know, teachers on the team because you've got to go do student teaching all the time. Or like I gave the example of the nursing program, they don't want student athletes because they have to miss their classes or clinicals. So just make sure that I know it's tough. You probably don't know exactly what you want to do. Lauren came in wanting to do actuarial science and switched to accounting, and I wanted to be an engineer, and I switched to actuarial science. So I know you don't know exactly what you want to do all the time, especially when you first go in, but make sure that you have a couple of ideas in mind and that it's cleared with both the programs that you're interested in and the coaches before you further commit to the school, because you would hate to limit yourself in one or the other. Yeah, that's kind of the big one there, communication with professors and coaches, just making sure that what you want to do is feasible. Did anyone have any questions on the communication aspect or different programs or things like that?
I don't have a question, but I'm going to LCC for softball, And I know like
Yeah.
my coach requires us to go and talk to our professors the first day, introduce ourselves so they know what you're going to be doing throughout the year, and you have to give them your schedule at the beginning of the class.
Yeah, honestly, I think that's best. Um, Also, another thing, professors are going to be an excellent resource for some of those letters of recommendation, especially because, sometimes those internships are limited depending on what, career you go towards. Have a great relationship with your professors. Make sure that you start that off right, maybe on the first day, first week, sit in the front row, make sure you're paying attention because you will be tired. So you kind of put that responsibility on yourself, put yourself in the front row, you won't fall asleep, things like that.
And you're not catching their eye because you're dressed to impress, because I took those night classes and I came so sweaty from practice, and a lot of night classes are people coming back for their masters, so they're coming from their 9 to 5 in suits, and I'm like, there's no way I smell good, I don't look good, and I'm eating a taco in the middle of class. So that's definitely not how you're going to get their attention. You want to make sure you have a good personal relationship with them. Anyone have anything else?
Did you guys switch your majors? Is that what you did? Like in the middle? Was that hard?
So for me, it wasn't too challenging because I decided my freshman year, after my first semester, I just had a class that was engineering related, and I didn't really care for it. So I decided to make the switch. So I took one class in the summer between my freshman and sophomore year that I should have taken during my freshman year first semester, but didn't because it wasn't my major, and I was caught up. So for me, it wasn't too bad, but I know, Lauren, you had a little bit extra work, especially graduating in 3 years.
Yeah, so I came in, I thought I knew exactly what I wanted to do, actuarial science. I like to think that I introduced that to Hayley, so you're welcome.
You did.
Yeah. But yeah, again, for me, it was first semester. I got through Calc 2 and I said, I don't really want to do that. I wasn't really prepared coming in, as well as I could be. I graduated high school in 3 years, so I came in freshly 17. It was a big shock. And then I think probably, it was the end of my freshman year, I wanted to double major in accounting at that point, accounting and vocal performance. So I got into the vocal performance program. It was just too big of a time commitment with what I wanted to do. So I kept accounting, and I played softball still. Otherwise, I would have had to make that decision. So it's making tough decisions, and it can be hard. But ultimately, it's, what you want to come out of college with. So just keep that in the back of your mind. That's going to be, like, first and foremost, that's going to be your driving factors there.
Absolutely. Any other questions on that topic, or any that we've talked about? Lauren, did you have anything else in mind for today?
Not really. Just a couple of those key things I hope you take forward into this. Really just communication, professors, your teammates, your coaches, especially during that recruiting process, making sure you're getting yourself out there. Academics is first. So try not to compromise when you're finding a school. If you know what you want to do, I'd recommend, picking a school that's going to allow you to do that. And then softball comes second. It's kind of like a perk. Because, to be honest, none of us are going to be, pro softball players on the USA or USSSA Pride. That's not going to work. So just making sure academics always comes first. And just, being prepared for that major change from, right now into college. It's going to be a large, time management issues that you probably will struggle with, but just being prepared for that. Other than that, I don't have anything else, Hayley.
So you kind of brought me into one other thing. So the academics first. I don't want you girls leaving this meeting thinking that the only way you can play in college is getting recruited like Lauren did in 8th grade or even your junior or senior year of high school. Pick a school based off your academics. Almost every school will have walk-on tryouts. I think during my time at Oakland, we had 3 or 4 walk-ons who tried out and made the team. A lot of them, unfortunately, didn't stick with it because the time commitment was more than what they were thinking. But someone, her name's Jackie, she was a walk-on my freshman year. She came to walk-on tryouts, and she made the team. And she ended up being a starter senior year. So don't think that just because you don't get recruited or you don't sign that national letter of intent in high school that you're not going to play in college, because it's absolutely possible. And another option, if you're not sure that college softball is the right thing for you based off of time commitment, or maybe you want, to really focus on those academics, club softball is always an option too. A lot of the bigger schools have club softball teams. I know my sister plays club sports at Oakland, and she loves it. She played volleyball and tennis growing up. She played travel, but she wasn't as serious about it as I was about softball. She did it because she liked it and she had fun with it, and so she tried out and made both of those club teams at Oakland, and she loves it. For club softball, you still play against other schools, so it's not like intramurals where you're just playing against other Oakland students. She actually has traveled, I think it was to University of Wisconsin, and played in a whole tennis tournament there against a bunch of other Division I programs. So there's alternative options other than getting recruited in high school and signing that letter and playing right out the gate. Anyone have any questions on that?
Do you guys do like year-round training, or is it just like a few months before the season starts?
It's definitely year-round in college. So usually when you get there in the fall, there's some sort of horrible conditioning test. Every school seems to have a different one. We did a different one a few different years, but basically to make sure you were putting in your work over the summer. And then we get right into it with weights 3 days a week and practice, and we play some fall scrimmages. Usually we hosted them and would play schools like Oakland Community College. We played Madonna, just some more local schools to get some reps in and fall scrimmages. And then things do settle down a little bit near finals time. You're still practicing, but there's certain rules, and I don't know exactly the time periods, but where you're not allowed to practice as a team. So we have what's called individuals. So it'll be you and a group of like 3 others, and you go for like an hour of the day, and maybe you have your hitting individual Monday, and on Tuesday your pitching individual, and things like that. So during that kind of, I think they call it a dead period, things slow down a little bit. During that dead period, they have a lot of like volunteer workouts, which are not volunteer at all. You should definitely be there for all of them. So if they say it's not mandatory, that's just because they have to say it, but you should definitely be there. So there's a lot of those where it's like on your own time. And then right when you get back from winter break, you have about a month before you leave for your spring trip. So we hit it really hard. We kind of cut back on weights a little bit. We kind of move into more circuit work rather than the heavy lifting that we did in the fall. And crank it back up with team practices, and then we're off for spring training, which is usually mid-February. And then you're playing games and practicing and working out through May, usually through the middle of May. And then in the summer, I know we both played 18U travel ball, a little bit more laid back, still practicing on your own, more to get your reps in than anything during the summer, and making sure you're conditioning and weightlifting still, because you're going to have that conditioning test when you come back in the fall. Lauren, anything to add there?
Yeah, one thing. In the fall, it is not quite representative of the chaos that's going to take place in the spring. Okay, like in the fall, they'll give you time to, do your finals in December. It'll be really relaxed. I mean, obviously you'll be practicing a lot of your heavy lifting, so pretty much you'll be bulking in the fall. And doing a lot more of that, lifting in there, a lot of workouts, things like that. In the spring, time management is really where that comes into play, okay, because you're playing through finals, you're playing through midterms, they don't really give you time to rest. So making sure that you're prepared for that, because it is a year-round thing, and there's really no off-season with college sports. So yeah, that's really all I wanted to touch on, though.
Yeah, to Lauren's point, in the spring, usually it's mandated. You can only play 20 hours a week, between like weights, practice, games, whatever, and you have to have one off day in the 7th. But note that your one off day is almost always spent on a bus going to or from a game or a tournament or whatever. So it's not really an off day. You're still with the team. You're still on the bus. You're still doing stuff. You just don't have an organized practice, weight lift, or game that day. But definitely an all-year thing. That was a good question. Anyone have any other questions?
I do have a few. I just wanted to ask, how did you guys handle stress and anxiety being in college and sports and all of that?
Yeah, it was really tough. And I think now I've actually seen on social media a lot of college athletes coming out about kind of like the mental health surrounding college athletics and how it's not maybe taken as seriously as it should be. And I totally agree with that. Geez, I don't know if I really had a good way of managing it, but you don't really have time to think about it. You know what I mean? It was just, okay, on to the next one. I remember my freshman year, I was taking a stats course, and I had never failed anything in my life. And it was one of those classes where I was missing the beginning of practice for, and I got my exam back, and I failed it, and I got in the car, and I had about a 3-minute drive to practice to just sob and call my mom and be like, I failed a test. What am I going to do? This is my first exam. It's only going to get worse. And I got into the dome, and they said, hey, get to stretching. You're late to practice. So you don't really have time to manage it the way that you would like, unfortunately, which is, I think, it's a great thing that they're coming out with, kind of talking more about it. We did have resources available to us. One big one that we started to do, I didn't go personally, but we would have like group sessions with a sports psychologist. Some girls found that super helpful. Sometimes we would be given off days to kind of catch up on things more in the off season, if you could call it that. But I don't know, Lauren, did you have a better way than just crying on practice to your mom and then sucking it up when you got there?
Oh, trust me, there was quite a few calls to my mom where I just started sobbing. There was also one time in the locker room where Hayley and I just sat there and cried for different things to Jody Messina, Bring on the Rain, and that was a great time. But yeah, I would definitely recommend organizing your day. Using a planner, using sticky notes, whatever's going to work for you, because you don't really have time. You don't have downtime. Really have time to think about anything. So, scheduling out, let's say, from 6 to 7, this is going to be our weights. And then you can even schedule out your breakfast, schedule out your study times so that you're not surprised, when it gets to the end of the day and you're exhausted and you're like, well, I don't have any time. So making sure that you're going to prioritize those things, because mental health, you really have to prioritize that. Even if you have to schedule out, we did have a sports psychologist, and he was a great resource to have. Scheduling out those times, they'll work with you on those. But yeah, and also you have an entire team that's supporting you, and coach staff. So if you ever need to talk with them about anything, I would just highly recommend. I mean, obviously, Hayley and I had some discussions in our dorms, and we just kind of vent, and that helped. Otherwise I'd be crying to my mom in the car, that helps too. Or, just talking to your coaches about, whatever, that they're there to help you through those as well.
Absolutely. I think leaning on your teammates is a great resource there, because they're going through the same thing that you're going through. So it's really easy to relate to them and to talk to them, and they get it. Other than that, I would agree with Lauren, planning out your day. I would highly recommend, if you're a procrastinator, to try to cut that habit before college. I had always been good at scheduling out my studies, my work, whatever. So if we had a project in November assigned in September, I was scheduling out how much of that project I was going to do each week. So when November hit, it was easy, turn it in, on to the next thing. And I, know some teammates who were up, we had weights at 6 and I was up till 3 a.m. finishing a project. So making sure that you're planning out studies and projects and that sort of thing, so that you're not missing out on things like sleep and, those sorts of things.
And then I guess the last one I had was who was the biggest influence on you during your whole softball career?
That's a good one. Well, I would say my biggest influence was probably my travel coach. His name is Brian Barnes. He was my travel coach from my second year 14U all the way through the time I got committed. He was very, very knowledgeable. He had a daughter who committed and went to play at Eastern. He knew what he was talking about, and I bought right in, and I worked hard. And, I really credit him more than anyone for getting me to the level of play I was at. Obviously, besides coaches, my mom and dad were a big support system. I mean, my mom was that kind of, brutally honest, if you sucked, you sucked, and if you were great, you were great. It was kind of a good reality check for me all the way through, and she always kept me, humble and things like that. And then, I'm sure all my pitchers in the group can relate to that parent. My dad sitting on that bucket for hours on end, catching the curve that won't curve or the fastball that wasn't fast enough. And, you look back and giving pitching lessons now, I see it in my younger girls, kind of those screaming matches between you and your dad in the backyard, or you and your mom, or whoever's catching for you. And it's funny, you look back and laugh because really they're there to help the whole time, although you hate to hear it from mom or dad. So I would say my parents definitely were that rock for me. And then Coach Brian, he was the one who kind of gave me the knowledge and the tools to get to that next level.
I definitely say my sister. I kind of followed in her footsteps. She committed to Oakland, and we were so close. I mean, we still are very close. But she was a pitcher, and then kind of by default, I was a catcher just because she needed somebody to catch for her. My dad's basically blind, so, I was just the fill-in. So, watching her, just kind of grow up and become that amazing softball player in college, that's really what I wanted to strive for. So she was a great resource to have. Whenever we had downtime, we'd go to the local field, and she would just have me hit her ground balls. We'd we'd do, pitching and catching for just hours on end. So really having that other person to kind of keep you, in check, making sure that you're putting in the work. I would say that'd be my sister for me.
All right. Any other questions, girls? From the group? If not, we really appreciate, your time, both Lauren and Hayley, and I think this was really good. We will put this up on our YouTube channel for the organization, so that way the girls that weren't available tonight can watch. And again, we really appreciate your time and efforts and your passion for the game.
No problem. I guess on a closing note, keep that passion for the game, because it's going to get you through the tough classes and the, high school struggles and whatever else. And I love to do it now. I love to coach it, and it's just kind of fun to continue to pass it on. So keep the passion.
Yeah, just remember why you started playing in the first place. That's always good to fall back on. But awesome. Thank you so much, guys.
Yep. All right.
I have a question for Hayley from Aaron.
Okay. I know. Hang on, Abby, because I know that you filmed my embarrassing Gators thing, because Eric texted me laughing about it. So I'm a little nervous for your second question, but let's hear it.
She wanted me to ask, she said, ask about her first at-bat with the new coach. She thinks it was your senior year.
Okay. So my freshman year, like I said, I played outfield. So I hit a little bit. I was a slapper. As a pitcher, I don't know if my other pitchers on the call can relate. I wasn't the greatest hitter on the team ever. I got the job done usually, but I was no power hitter. I was mostly there to move some runners. So when I was playing outfield, I would hit for myself, but if I was pitching, I was not in the lineup. So my senior year, my first 2 years, Coach Miner was there. She got fired after sophomore year, so my second 2 years, it was Coach Lauren Karn. She was there, and it was my senior year. We were playing in one of our spring trips, and I went in to pitch for a different pitcher who was hitting for herself at the time. So I was a little bit shocked when she told me I was up to bat. I'm pretty sure I had a handful of at-bats my sophomore year, maybe, but definitely none my junior year. So I had not really hit in a game other than travel in the summer in a while. My first pitch, she called for a bunt, and I'm trying to think, remember correctly. It was either a ball or I fouled it off, one of the two. It was nothing too embarrassing, but it wasn't successful. But the issue was, since I never hit, I kind of shouldn't have tuned out the hitting signs, but I totally did. And she was trying to tell me what to do. We had the armband numbers. I was not good at them for pitching, and I was even worse for hitting because I was so nervous to be in that box. So the catcher probably heard me, but I was trying to mouth to her, do you want me to bunt or no? Do you want me to bunt or no? And obviously it was too late. I swung because I wasn't sure what to do, and I popped it up to the shortstop. So I did not strike out, but it was not successful. That was another embarrassing one. Thank you, Erin. I'm sure you're watching the recording of this now for playing on my most embarrassing softball moments.
She's making me ask the questions and then videotape the responses, just so you know.
That's fair.
I think my favorite time was when you tripped over your shoelace for the first time that you pitched in front of Lauren Karn.
So
Great time for me.
the first time I pitched in front of a new coach, I didn't really pitch my first 2 years at Oakland, so I was excited to get a new coach. When I committed to Oakland, Coach Miner told me they mostly needed me in the outfield, and then I could kind of earn a role as a pitcher on the team, and I was totally cool with that. I just hadn't really had the opportunity up to that point to earn that role. So junior year comes, it's a new coach. I'm excited, like, I'm going to pitch this year. So I'm pitching in front of Coach Lauren for probably the first time, and I went to throw a screwball, and when I pushed off the mound, my left metal cleat got stuck in my right shoelace, and I fell really hard, and I hit my leg with the ball on the way down, like, so embarrassing. And Lauren, do you want to share what she said to me? The only words of wisdom she had to offer.
Yeah, all she had to say was, "Oh, tuck them bad boys in."
And then moved on, tucked them bad boys in, and walked away. And I was like, okay, so I'm never pitching at Oakland, because she probably thinks I've never pitched before in my life. The funny part of that one, senior year, towards the end of the year, I was talking to her about it, and I was like, man, that was probably the most embarrassing moment of my softball career, which I'm sure you girls cannot believe, with the 3 embarrassing stories I've been forced to tell in just an hour. But that was probably the most embarrassing moment of my softball career, and she claimed she doesn't even remember it. So I guess if there's a lesson in all of this, it's maybe seems like a big deal at the time, but probably not such a big deal in the grand scheme of things.
All right. Any other questions?
Erin also really wants Lauren to sing.
I want Lauren to sing too. Vocal performance major. Let's hear it for Lauren.
I wasn't I didn't finish, so I think, the acoustics, they're not great in here. I've had a sore throat for like 3 months now. This is not the suitable environment to request this of me. Another time.
I will relay that back to Erin.
Thank you. Show fingers down.
All right. Well, thank you, ladies. Have a good night. I appreciate everything.
Yeah, thanks for letting us chat with the girls. That was fun.
All right. Yep. Good night.
Thank you. Thank you.